Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. You should recognize our guest. I mean, if you've been a long-time listener, at least we have Rene back on the podcast. It's been, God, over 3 years, I believe, since we last had her on. We were talking about this before, but yeah, she's on here to just give us an update on what she's been up to since we last had her on. But most importantly, Rene, thank you so much for coming back on.
Of course. Yeah, we were talking about how long it's been. The last time I was on, I want to say I was 22, 23, just finishing Tampa Pro, and now we're 5 years of pro, just turned 26. Time has gone by so fast.
And like I told her before, I'm about to be 30 in a couple of months, so I don't know how to deal with that mentally. But people say your 30s are the best, so I'm just praying on that as it is. But we are talking to you in a different location now. When you did message me and say, oh, by the way, I'm 2 hours behind you now as opposed to an hour in front of you, I was like, okay, that's going to make things a little bit more interesting. But you are in Las Vegas now. You were in Connecticut before. So
Yes.
what was the reasoning behind the move and what's it been like?
Yeah, so I was East Coast born and raised, 25 years there. I love the East Coast, I like all the seasons, all that. I was in a long distance relationship, which is pretty much the reason for the move. I was, bouncing around looking at ideas of places I want to go to getting out of Connecticut long before, I got into my relationship. But I guess this was just kind of the stars aligning, like I said. So we were together for like a year or so, and then we decided, let's make the move, and haven't looked back.
I will say, as someone who is a big Elvis Presley fan, that someone's in Las Vegas. I've always wanted to go there. I've never been there myself, but have you at least have you gone to a casino or done any of that stuff while you're in town?
Yeah, my birthday was on the 8th, and I had some family come down from the East Coast, so we went to like the Sphere, we went to a bunch of restaurants. I've gone to some of the clubs out here. I've been to a bunch of casinos and like really nice restaurants they've had. Unfortunately, like the majority of the time I've been here, I was in prep, so from like January 2023 all the way to September. So not really much you can do while you're in prep. So we're kind of like getting back into doing things now that the weather's getting nice. Kind of miss the winter.
Okay, like I was telling her just before we started recording here, everyone, we just got a foot of snow here, and I've been shoveling all morning and afternoon. So trust me, you can miss the winter all you want, but the moment you would see that snowfall, you'll just be like, okay, yeah, screw this. But I do got to ask you about the Sphere because I've heard mixed reviews on it, where some people say it's the greatest thing ever, and then other people say like, wow, what a piece of crap.
So I thought it was really cool. It's definitely like a really cool experience. I would definitely say like do it once. The only issue I had was like the seating in the rows. Uh, First of all, when you walk in, you get very nauseous because you're just so high up. You like get walking up and down the stairs. The aisles are very thin. If you're a bodybuilder any bigger than me or a male bodybuilder, you're not like a woman actually fell like down one of the rows because it's just so narrow. And you're kind of like crammed up. But besides that, it was a cool experience. I did just like that. I forgot exactly what it was called, but it was like you saw like the earth and like all the different places. So it was definitely cool. Very pricey. Oh my God, as a birthday present, I couldn't even tell you how much it was. But we were pretty high up and it was pricey. So if you're going to go, I would recommend going down low where you're not going to fall or get nauseous. Yeah.
Yeah, my little brother went to go see Adele in Las Vegas. He lives in San Diego now, and the ticket prices for that, good God, don't even get me started on that. That was a nightmare. But you mentioned that you go out to clubs too. So what's the reaction that a female bodybuilder gets when they go to a club? Because I can imagine when people are inebriated and they are maybe not as they tend to speak their mind a little bit. What's that like? Just getting those type of reactions from the people in the clubs.
Well, usually when I'm going out to the clubs, I kind of go out with a lot more muscular people too. So
That helps.
we all kind of blend in, but I definitely get like, you have really nice arms or a lot of people will ask me if like I'm competing or prepping for a show just because I stay relatively lean year round. So I definitely get a lot of like stares and like questions, a lot of like MMA questions, which I definitely don't fight. But it happens at the club, at the gas station, at the grocery store. I stay covered up for the most part just because I don't mind talking to people. I'm a people person, but I'm always like in a rush or have like, I'm like planning to do something later on or I'm trying to get from place to place. So it's kind of hard when you have to stop and talk to people, but I appreciate it. It's nice.
Do you ever think that just because you hear the words MMA so much that eventually you might just become an MMA fighter just because so many people are recommending it to you that you're like, okay, what the hell?
Well, MMA, it's super cool. It's interesting. I definitely like, I was a athlete my whole life, multiple sports. So, the reflexes might still be there, but, I considered MMA. It was either like bodybuilding or MMA. I was definitely like when I started out. I was like, what should I like do? And then I just thought about getting punched in the face and surgeries and bleeding, and not a fan. I feel like my injury, what is it, risk to reward would be a little bit better with bodybuilding.
Well, and I'm sorry, but just genetic wise at 5'2", you're not gonna. That'll be an interesting MMA site too. They might have to
Just
make
go
a
for
they
the
might have to make
knees.
a division. Yeah, they might have to make a division for like 5'4" or shorter or something like that. Then to really have it be. But just talking about bodybuilding, what have you been up to in the last 3 years? I mean, we had talked to you last. I think when you just finished Tampa. What did you do in the? I mean, I know it's hard to remember the last 3 years, but what did you, if you can, what were the last 3 years like for you?
Well, I mean, the last 2 years have been pretty monotonous, so it's kind of easy to remember. I do basically I'm on like the same schedule every day.
I
That's why
sometimes
like
forget that I'm talking to bodybuilders, people.
yeah, and that's why like when sometimes like something like minor even just happens, I'm like, oh, I gotta change my whole schedule because everything is planned. Uh, yeah, I competed last year. I took 2022 off to grow right after Tampa. I I was happy with the conditioning I brought, but I definitely was like, we need a lot more size. Just overall shape just wasn't there. So we took that whole year off to grow, and I decided we're gonna prep 2023. I competed at the New York Pro, I think May 2023, May or June. I can't remember the exact date. That's a little blurry. But I placed well there, in my opinion. I got fourth. I can't remember how many women were there. I want to say 30, something close to that. Top three were all pretty much seasoned Olympians, people that I've looked up to in the sport. So I guess it was like really cool for me to just stand on stage next to them and battle it out. It was a really good show. It was early in the year, so I know a lot of people are like, usually the earlier shows aren't the best, but it was a really competitive show. I was really proud of that. Usually I do one show, shut it down, and I'm like, all right, we have to improve because I never think I'm good enough because that's how all of us bodybuilders are. So I was like, let's just try another show. I got fourth. The judges really said that everything was spot on. I just had to tighten up in certain areas, which easy to do. Um, but unfortunately, I was in the grasp of moving, and there were just a lot of parts moving across the country, flying back and forth. So we pushed it kind of as far as I could. So I did San Antonio. I moved to Vegas in August, and then I competed in September. So there was like a month or so in between that. I did San Antonio. I brought a tighter look, I thought, in my opinion, which, was asked of the head judges, Tyler, and Steve. I think it was Steve that was judging too, or Sandy, one of them, but I know Tyler for sure. He told me face to face. Did San Antonio, ended up getting, I believe, 14th, which is not very uh, good, in my opinion. I kind of looked at that. There were people that were, ahead of me that weren't as in great condition. So I think they were kind of telling me, maybe this isn't a division for you. I still to this day have not gotten feedback. I still can't find the head judge's email. I reached out to fellow competitors who competed with me and they couldn't find it. I reached out to my coach, the promoter. So I kind of took it into my own hands. I talked to my coach and we kind of figured, I'm young. I just turned 26. I don't plan to stop growing. My body wants to keep growing. So I think that we're just going to take the move to women's physique. So that's kind of where we ended my season last year, kind of, thinking, oh, we're going to have to completely change everything now. You're posing, the way you train. I like a challenge. I think when I started, women's physique was kind of where I was going regardless. I love to train hard and heavy. And I think with figure, not that those women don't train hard and heavy. Trust me, they train. I wasn't figure, so we train just as hard. But I think it's more of I want to say like a genetic division. They want the teeny tiny waist, the taper. If you're not born with that, it's very, very hard to create that illusion. You see Sydney Gillen, 5-time Miss Olympia, I believe now. You know, she was born like that and she just built her physique to what it is today. It's very hard to compete with. So I think I'm gonna just keep growing and, get a little bigger and move up a division.
Plus, you don't have to wear those high heels anymore, so that's a plus too. I mean,
That was the main thing. I have some hip issues and all that, so it took me a while just to learn to pose properly in heels. Because you have to make very small, concise turns, and everything's very small, so you have to be very careful not to trip or, and when you're lean like that, your body and your feet do not want to be in heels.
So how frustrating is that? I mean, obviously without like bad mouthing any judges, but like just the fact that this sport is so subjective, where it really just is people's opinions. Now, even though I mean they are judges, so their opinions do matter when it comes to the placing, but just realizing that it really in a lot of scenarios that I've talked to people, it really just depends on who the judges are.
Yeah, so, I started off my bodybuilding career amateur-wise, pretty much winning every show I did, which, you're winning, you're on a high, and then you go into the pro league, and it's not like that, and I kinda knew that, when I went pro, there was kinda like a feeling in my gut where, I wasn't as excited just because 'cause I'm like, "Okay, now the hard work really starts." So, like, I did Tampa, I didn't place well, and that kind of was my first real loss. So I knew what that taste felt like, and that's why, like, I tell people, like, losing is like a good thing. You don't want to be on a high all the time and then eventually you lose and it tears you down. So having that loss, pretty much my first pro show, it helped me a lot and it was like a big lesson. So when I did New York, I was appreciative of fourth. And then when I did San Antonio, at first I was a little bit sour just because a part of me was like, oh, I could have just shut it down after New York and, started my improvement season early. But like I said, maybe if I did that and I didn't do San Antonio, I wouldn't be even considering women's physique. So blessing in disguise. I kind of took that and I was like, with the conditioning I can get into, because I remember for some shows, like I was kind of holding back on my condition because, for figure, they don't want you to be too grainy. They don't want shredded glutes, which I can achieve. So I figured, why are we going to stay in this division where I have to put myself in a box? I can't train arms. I took a whole year off training arms and chest, just to make sure my shoulders were catching up. Because the bigger your arms are and chest are, the smaller your shoulders. So a lot of things I didn't want to do just to stay in a division where now I'm kind of looking back, like I maybe didn't even fit there to begin with.
Well, I do have to say that I do think it's sacrilege, but being the gym bro that I am, that you didn't train arms for a year, how did you deal with that mentally? Because as just a gym bro, just imagining that, I don't know if I could live.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue was that I loved training arms a little too much. When I started off like at 15, 16, I was like curling every day. Like I just loved getting like a bicep pump. I feel like when you start off, like especially like young bodybuilders, whatever part they feel the most or get the most pump in, they usually want to train that the most. It feels the best. So that was kind of it was hard. I kind of made that decision myself. I just kept looking at my physique and I'm like, my shoulders just aren't growing as fast as my arms. And that's definitely a problem. I just don't have as great of shoulder genetics. I have a lot of like impingements and such. So it was difficult, but it was strange because even though I didn't train them, they were developing kind of almost at the same rate as everything else. So, training back twice a week helped with arm development. Your biceps are a secondary muscle when you're training back. So they were getting fatigued in a different way. I just wasn't training them directly. Um, Same with chest, certain shoulder movements and pushing movements. I guess your chest gets contracted and all that. So I guess I was training them indirectly, but I couldn't actually have like a chest and arm day. So it sucked. And now that I look back, I'm like, great. Now this kind of put me in like what's it called? It held me back a little now that I'm doing women's physique. But we're back to like regularly scheduled programming. We're training everything, back to training arms. I think my arms, they still grew, like I said, without me directly training them. So yeah, I'm happy now that we got them back in the program.
Well, and we talked about this before, but the one body part that really took off for you in the last 3 years that you say you improved on the most is your back. How did you do it?
Yes.
Because I know that's an area that luckily I have never struggled with, so I'm just going to,
Mhm.
zone out now. But how did you happen to grow your back as much as you did?
Yeah, well, like you were saying before when you were like, I liked the rowing machine a lot when I was young, so I guess those genetics stuck with me. I'm saying right now, row your boats. I used to do a lot of pull down movements when I started off, like heavy pull downs. Not to say pull downs you shouldn't do them. If I'm being honest, I haven't can't tell you the last time I did a lat pull down. I do pull ups, which I think are just an overall better movement.
You could honestly just do that for a lot of people, and that's really all they need, honestly.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times when you're doing pull downs, you're forced like I said, a lot of people do things wrong. They use more of their arms or they don't lean back enough or they lean back too much. So when you're doing a pull up, it kind of fixes you in that place that you kind of have to use your back muscles, I feel like, at least for me. Um, so a lot of heavy, heavy, heavy rowing. Like I said, I do 2 back days, so I just do different variations of rows on each back day. I kind of do one back day more of like a width day, more of a thickness day on the other one. But yeah, a lot of barbell rows, a lot of T-bow rows, dumbbell rows. I like to do a lot of machine work. I mainly start off with that, a lot of stretching movements, like overhead pulls, low cable rows with the handles, things like that. But I would say just a lot of rowing. Rowing and pull-ups are kind of the bread and butter to my back days, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
No, those are honestly two of the bigger ones that I've heard, especially when it comes to growing your back. But you did mention that, being in Vegas, there are a lot more bodybuilders there. Have you ever been star-studded in the gym seeing someone in Vegas?
Yes and no. It's I'm not the type that like sees celebrities and goes crazy. I definitely like gain inspiration. But like Nick Walker trains over at Dragon sometimes. I have never seen him in person, him being from the East Coast too. So he's a very big human being. Especially like seeing the open guys walking around, you're kind of like, okay, these are some big human beings. You see them on Instagram, but you don't really realize in real life. So a lot of that. I did go to see the Olympia when they had it here. I know they're kind of going back and forth between Florida and here. So it's cool, to see like all the old school bodybuilders showing up, past Olympia champions. Yeah, I definitely am more starstruck like in that sense. But in the gym, I'm extremely like laser focused. People like think I'm mean, but I just have to put myself in a certain place when I train. That's why I like mainly train alone, just because I go to like that dark place to train. I'm like, if you're lifting super heavy weight with a smile on your face, all power to you, but that's just not me. So I kind of, just try to get in and get out, do my job and go home. But I definitely like, especially when I was in prep and seeing other people prepping around me, you see some freaks in the gym. Definitely a lot more than back when I was at home.
I will say you would be nominated for probably the RBF Hall of Fame for the guests that I've had. And again, it's nothing that you can control. It's just some people just naturally have it. I sometimes have it too, which is hilarious. And as the moment I open my mouth, everyone just completely is like, "Oh, it's completely different than what we thought." So that's something that I actually enjoy myself. And with celebrities too, yeah, like I only have probably 4 or 5 celebrities, which I will tell you after we're done recording this podcast because I don't want to give it away to everyone. But I only have like 4 or 5 celebrities where I wouldn't freak out, but I'd be like, "Oh my god, that's them!" Like, holy crap. But otherwise, it'd be like, oh yeah, it's so and so, cool. But yeah, so yeah, it's different now, especially as you get older too, and you realize that like, oh, they're just people. And now that I
I was just gonna say
just
that,
talk
like,
to them
they're
too,
just
and you're just like,
people,
yeah,
yeah.
it's different. And that's why I tell people, it's like if you just follow all these people on Instagram and stuff like that, and if you have the opportunity to meet them in person, do it because it does make you realize that yeah, everyone is just we're all human beings. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
there. I mean, people are a little bit more special than others in some areas of their life, whether it comes down to, certain aspects, but in general, we're all just human beings. So, and I think just meeting people in person really helps you understand. Cause I know so many people, like they look at some of these images of, female or even male bodybuilders too, especially where they just look at them and they just think that like, oh, these people are just, they're completely different and stuff like that. It's like, no, they're just human beings that have more dedication
Yeah.
than you when it comes to working out.
And I've met a lot of like top pros that are extremely nice. Not a big ego, the bodybuilding community. Some people are nicer than others, of course, but any people that I've looked up to and I've approached them in the gym, nothing but kind words and advice and stuff. So that's good to
And
see
plus, if they
too.
do have a big ego, this is what you do everyone that jump out. Just tell them that they look small and walk away. That will mind F
That
them for
gets
the
all
rest of
of
the
them.
day. Yeah, if someone, or I've always said, if you have the opportunity, just walk up behind them and whisper in their ear, looking a little small today, and then turn and run as soon as don't even acknowledge them afterwards or even have time. That could mess them up for a good week or so. If they so that's your that's your go-to. If like yeah, that's your ammo, that's your go-to if you really get down to it. But making the change now with women's physique, how are you doing with the posing? Because I mean, obviously, every bodybuilder knows the physique. Every female bodybuilder, even if you're a bikini or figure, you know the physique and bodybuilding poses, just because
Yeah.
they're the norm, what everyone considered the normal bodybuilding poses. But how have you been transitioning just to making a routine out of that?
Well, I'm still working on it. Posing is definitely out of like my whole career in bodybuilding. Posing is definitely where I fall short. It's something I just have to work on. Like I've said in the past, I'm an athlete. I've been an athlete my whole life. I was never on stage. I never did like dance or performed in front of a crowd in that sense, unless it was like an athletic setting on a team. So I felt like I just got like the figure posing down, like just this year or
Especially
last
flaring
year.
the lats too, because that's the one pose that everyone says is the hardest that I talk to.
Which poses?
Flaring the lats.
Oh, that's no issue for me. I think the issue for me is
So
just
you were blessed with a less than genetically perfect back, but then you were given the ability to at least show it off as good. So that's a curse, basically,
yeah.
honestly. Where
Well, I
when
felt like the more I grew my back, the easier. Like now, I'll like flare, and I'll be like, "Is it flared?" And it's completely flared, just because I feel like sometimes the more muscle you have in a certain areas, you don't have to like flex as hard or do too much to bring it out. It's there.
I
Um,
just want to see you get to a point where you do a front double bind, you're like, is it even flex? And then that's when you know that you're like the best ever. When you're like, you don't even know.
well, let me get back on my arm training for another year, and we'll see.
I mean, hey,
But
you're behind. I mean, just thinking about the curls that you're gonna have to do is, it's making me happy just knowing that at least there's gonna be something done in that department at least.
yeah, like I actually did arms yesterday right at the end of my back workout. But I definitely have to hire a posing coach. I don't know if you know Christina Mendoza. She lives out here in Vegas. Her and her man, they do posing. What was their posing? Goodness gracious, I was gonna like try and plug it. Oh, KJ Center Stage. They do that. So I'm gonna link up with her for women's physique. Figure. It's pretty self-explanatory. Front, back, side pose, model pose. Not too hard. It's definitely harder in the sense of one, you're wearing heels. Two, everything has to be very, small, and you don't want to move around too much. It's very concise. But with women's physique, there are more poses, there are more body parts to be shown off. There's more variations of the way you could hit them. So I'm kind of finding my way in the posing. I check in every week. Actually, tomorrow I'll be checking in. And I have been doing women's physique poses. I've kind of just been tweaking them and showing different poses that I think might look good for my physique. Right now, I'm not entirely sure, what's perfect for me yet until I really nail it down with a coach. But even when I was in figure, like you could even like see on my Instagram, I was doing like a lot of most musculars, and I kind of already know the poses. It's just mainly transitions and just tweaking them to fit my body. I would say is the main thing I got to work
First
on.
of all, petition to have most muscular be like the first pose that they do, because that to me that's one of my favorites, and that's one that like they should make like mandatory basically to do for, because
Yeah,
I
I
know for a
love
lot
the
of people
most
it isn't.
muscular.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah, I
always
don't know
that's
why they don't have it. It's weird. They also don't have is it the back lat spread in classic physique? Like there are just some poses that they just don't want for certain divisions. Um I don't know. I think they might have most muscular for women's bodybuilding, do they?
I think they might. Well, and I know that one person said that the reason might have been because it seems an intimidating look for women to do a most muscular and like grit their teeth. It's like, and yet you have bikini competitors that basically just do the back pose, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But it's like, and that's the
That's what I'm
same thing. But so that's why I said it that where I was like, and first of all, let's be completely honest. Like I've said before, like she said, she's 5'2". So if you're intimidated by someone who's 5'2", you need to stay in the house. Like let's be completely honest. Like you
yeah.
can't really leave. Not saying that you're not in present, but like I'm just saying like we know.
Yeah.
Like if you're like an
But it's
average
like
size
to
guy,
say like that pose is too intimidating. It's like, aren't all of them? Like we are muscular female. We're just gonna be a
you
little
guys
bit
just
more
start
intimidating.
grunting the entire time then, and just really take it up a notch where it
Yeah.
just gets to a point where everyone's like, okay, this is all these people do is they don't even breathe anymore. But yeah, I've just found that to be so hilarious that some of the responses that you get, especially, but let's be completely honest too, the look that you have even like a year ago, let's say when I last talked to you, that would be a physique competitor's look, but just how much the divisions have changed, even figure competitors, when I first started this podcast 6 years ago, I mean, the way that they look now, they were what physique competitors were, at that time. So what's that been like being in this sport and just seeing the divisions change so much and everything just gets so much harder and just bigger?
Well, I want to like say I wish the judges would give like a clear criteria. They've been trying. I don't think it's entirely the judges' fault. I do think that, sometimes you go to a show and they're like, we want you to be tighter, and then you come in tighter, and then they'll be like, you're too tight. So there's that aspect. But like I was saying before, a lot of divisions I truly believe are like just genetic divisions. Figure, I believe, you have to be born with that tiny waist. And I think some of the reason why people are getting bigger is the issue I was having. Like a lot of people would see me when I was in prep last year and they were like, you should be doing women's physique. And, I found that out now. But the reason why I was getting so big is because I was not born with a teeny tiny waist. So I had to build everything else around it to be bigger. So I think a lot of people were falling into that. And then you kind of look at Sydney Gillen, who is, a figure Olympia, and she's not that big in general. It's just all illusion. So I also see the lines getting blurred with women's physique and women's bodybuilding. I see a lot of crossover now. A lot of people are leaving women's physique and going to women's bodybuilding, which rightfully so. But there are still some women in women's physique who I think, should be in women's bodybuilding. Same with figure. I'm getting out of figure. I know there are some other girls who are very heavily muscled who might be better in women's physique, but it's hard to say. A lot of us look very similar, especially like in the gym when we're not posing. A lot of us are pretty much the same size, so it's very hard to tell who's doing what division sometimes. Um, I don't have a problem with, as time goes on and everything in life, things evolve. But I think it is getting to a point where, it's getting a little too big, just in the sense of you can't determine between women's bodybuilding and women's physique. So that's the only issue. I don't have an issue with size or muscle. I love the muscular divisions, which is why I compete in them. But when you're getting too big where lines are getting blurred within divisions, that's when there's an issue in my part.
Well, the only thing for me is that like when it gets to a certain point where your health just becomes like so at risk, that's when I say where like people are just saying, "Oh, you just don't like them too big because you don't think that they look feminine." It's like that is not the reason at all. I just don't like the fact that when let's say the look that they had 5 years ago, you had like a 1% chance of having something really bad happen to you. Now, if it's like up to like a 5 or 10% chance, then you're like, okay, like you got to tone it down. Just because there's been so many deaths recently, and there's been guests that I've had on that have died, and I'm just so that's the thing where it's like I appreciate the size and the hardness of it. It's just like we need to find a way to make it so that it's safer for the athletes that doing it because you should not have to be risking your health to compete in a sport. So.
I agree. And then you see the top competitors in the female divisions, at least that I know of. They're not taking some cycles that I see that some other women are taking. And that's right back to genetics. You can outwork great genetics. I've seen it done, but there are realms where some people are going to have to risk your health. And is it worth it? Honestly, no. That's why, I do bodybuilding. I love it. I tell people all the time, if I didn't have, I don't think I have the best genetics, but I think I have some pretty decent genetics, at least conditioning wise. I know putting on muscle just takes time, which I'm willing to put the work in. But by no means would I ever deliberately try to risk my health or do something dangerous just to maybe win a show. And I see people doing it even in amateur league. I couldn't imagine. We're not getting paid crazy amounts of money professionally. So, a lot of us don't do it for the money, of course, but I just couldn't see risking your health for it
I've
at all.
said this a handful of times on the show, but I've talked to someone who's on the younger side, who is a bikini competitor, who's an amateur, who is taking trend. And then I've talked to like figure competitors that are on D-ball and stuff like that. And it's just like you get to that point where you're just like, okay, if you need to do that, this is not your sport. Like it's like you find something else to do. And I wish you the best, but it's like if you're gonna just for a bikini competitor, it's like, come on, guys.
I couldn't even imagine even thinking to try that stuff, honestly. But like everyone who signs up to bodybuild signs up. Well, gets into it. We all understand there is a risk in our health. Even if you're a natural, just competing, getting to that percent body fat, gaining weight back, you have to do it correctly. There's so many variables, and it's not healthy, especially in prep. And even in the off season when you're force feeding food, I've had many issues with reflux, a whole bunch of things. So when you're adding unnecessary things on top of all of that, you're just adding fuel to the fire. That's why I tell people try and do it as healthily as you can. And if you're getting into territories where you're severely risking your health, it's just not worth it anymore. It really isn't. You can still have a great physique and live a healthy lifestyle and be in the sport without competing or risking anything like that. And that's what I tell people. I achieved the conditioning I currently get when I was naturally, and my first show was when I realized I can probably do this for a while. And if you're not doing well, and you're putting your health at risk, you kind of just maybe need to reevaluate things. Not saying you shouldn't bodybuild or lift weights, but there's a line to be
Oh,
drawn.
and trust me, I'm not against, steroids or anything like that. I've never tried them
Yeah,
myself, but like the only problem that I have, I've said this too. It's your life, and like I said, I get the point too that you said like a lot of these bodybuilders. Yeah, I mean, you sign up for this. You choose this. That's like why when people say that they're making the rules for football less fun for me, and I agree with that too, because like these guys sign up to do it. But anyways, like I don't want to get on a football tangent because they just unveiled some new rules today, and that could be a whole 10-hour conversation that I have in that. But
yeah,
no, like you talk about like how the bodybuilders choose to do this, but the only thing there's two things that only piss me off for this are the coaches that take naive people and they sort of trick them into doing stuff. And the people, again, they don't do their research, which I always say, do your research. But the coaches do trick these people into, especially when they're younger, and then it messes
oh
them
yeah,
up for the rest of their lives. And then the only other time that I get pissed off is the people who, oh my God, look, you can look just like me if you just follow my workout plan. It's like you're juiced to the gills. I can literally see like veins on your veins. So it's, yeah. Those are only two things for me. Other than that, it's like, do whatever you want as long as you don't like another thing. Well, just don't lie to people and be like, oh my God, it's really healthy to do what I'm doing. And it's like, no, and I have heard some people be like, there's so many benefits to doing like HGH and TRT. And it's like, maybe when you're like 70 years old, but not when you're like 14.
yeah. There's certain ages because like my boyfriend owns a hormone clinic, but he would
Wait. So
never.
can you give me the hookup?
Yeah, probably. Honestly, he likes HRT out here in Vegas. Um, but well, that's like I see that as like a benefit in a way for bodybuilders. I by no means are they allowing like teenagers to come get and but when you think
I've
about
heard stories, Renee.
well not for well they're
Oh
not
no, no, no! I'm not saying your boyfriend's like selling to
no
like
yeah yeah
teenagers, but
but
I'm just
that's
saying
what
like
I'm
I've heard
saying.
like you hear these crazy stories like 13 and 14-year-olds that are on that stuff, and you're like, dude, you're never gonna be able to produce testosterone the rest of your life then.
And the main thing in that is like where are you getting that from? Because you know someone probably made that in their bathtub. But what's great about like TRT and like the hormone clinics that like are around now, it's safer for bodybuilders, you know, to get like the drugs they need at safe amounts. You know exactly what you're getting. You're not putting some strange mixture you have no idea because you know you it's the same thing with just buying recreational drugs on the street. You do not know what these people are putting in it. Um but besides that, with back to like the younger people, yeah, do your research before I ever get with a coach. I usually message 4 to 5 of their clients and get like a good detailed idea. That's not to say they, you know, they know exactly who the coach is, but reach out to people, get as much feedback as you can from people who have had experience with them. Talk to them about like what they offer. Make sure they're keeping health um, in check. You know, make sure that they're having you take supplements like vitamins, not just giving you certain foods. Make sure they're asking you for blood work. Make sure they're asking you how you feel, not just how you look. You know, these are all green flags for a coach. A red flag is coaches that just give you a diet plan, ignore you. They don't care. They want to give you a cycle right off the bat. My coach has never brought up gear to me. That's just another green flag. Not to say the coaches shouldn't, but when you're comfortable or you feel like you're in a spot, maybe, you know, approach a coach. But if you get with a coach and right off the bat has you take a laundry list of things or said, you know, wrong. Especially if you're like a first time lifter or competitor. Do your first show naturally. That's what I did. Um, and that's going to give you your best idea of if you should maybe take something or keep going. If you can't, you know, hold your own as a natural or you don't look good naturally, do you think that taking a bunch of drugs is just going to make you look good? That's what I'm kind of getting at. So there's just many ways to like find a coach and do things the right way. That's just my main thing with bodybuilding. Like just do it the right way.
Well, and I just the thing I love about you most is that just how open you are, because there needs to be more of that too, especially on the female side. And I understand why some people aren't as open about it, especially like if I'm talking to people who are like nurses or doctors, like you can't really admit to stuff then because like you can get
Hmm.
fired and stuff. But
Yeah, I
I
agree.
just think there needs to be a little bit more openness too, because so many people just walk into this and then when they find out that like, oh, everyone's doing it, then they just think, oh, I have to do it then if I want to come. And it's like, no, there you can do natural federations or like you said, you did your first show naturally, and some people are just you know
Yeah, and I won naturally. That's what, against people who were on PEDs.
Okay,
So,
I'm sorry, but how embarrassing is that for the people on PEDs? That someone who's natural
well,
comes in
they
and
didn't
beats you?
believe me. I mean, when I did it, I was very young. I didn't really even
That's
know
even
much about
worse. A young person who is natural comes in and beats these seasoned people, probably they're on PEDs. I would be like, okay, I'm retiring now. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, but that's what I tell people, like, that was kind of, like, my wake-up call, like, you can maybe do something in this sport, and when I did go pro, if someone saw my cycle, LOL, like, you shouldn't rely on drugs is just the main thing. We all use them, we need them, but certain doses, certain compounds, you don't. So I think that a lot of people are just taking unnecessary things just because some coaches just have a protocol and they're like one shoe fits all, everyone do this, and I'm like, you don't, especially like certain compounds I see some females taking, I'm like, you definitely don't need that, and if you think you do, this is not the sport for you because you're going to seriously affect your health later down the road, maybe not now, but it's going to come back to bite you.
Well, and the funny thing is, this has happened more than once where it's some of the littler people that you find are taking the most stuff, and then some of the bigger people aren't taking as much. Now, again, they are still taking stuff, but it is kind of rare because there's always that stigma that, like, oh, the bigger they are, they must be just on so much stuff that, like, they can't even function. So yeah,
And I
that's
tell people the last prep I had, that cycle was smaller than even the one I did before that. Like it's not a one shoe fits all. And once you have the muscle, it's very hard to lose it. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like when people are like, "Oh, I lost 30 pounds of muscle in like a month." I'm like, unless you were like completely starving and running on a treadmill every day, it wasn't just 30 pounds of straight. You know what I mean? So once you develop the muscle, you don't. I just look at PEDs as like a little push and recovery and helping keep things where they are. It's by no means just going to grow a bunch of muscle on you. I don't know if people think that, but it's definitely not.
Well, okay, so we're just that stupid freaking movie Love Lies Bleeding just came out, a couple weeks ago, and it's that, bodybuilding movie. So in that, I made a post about how much I hate movies like that promote the stereotype of like, oh, you just inject one thing and then all of a sudden, apparently, I've read the Wikipedia for it. I'm not going to go see that movie because it's like, I can
Yeah.
tell it's going to
Well,
promote.
I saw the previews. I actually posted on my story
Yeah,
not too long ago, and I was like, I just read what this was about, and like I just thought about a girl coming to Vegas to bodybuild. I'm
yeah.
like, oh, that sounds like me.
Little different than you, Renee, well, from what I've
Well,
read from the
yeah,
Wikipedia
because
article. Yeah.
I also saw like the pictures for it, and I'm like, you couldn't have used an actual bodybuilder. Like these don't look like bodybuilders. You know what I mean?
Okay, so I will tell you who it is after we're done, but there was a guest that I had on. One of the guests that I really enjoyed a lot, she got offered that role, but
Oh,
turned it down
wow.
because she said she didn't like the script and some of the stuff that happened. I'll give you the name afterwards, but I don't,
Hmm.
I'm obviously without her permission, I'm not gonna say it, but like, yeah, I was shocked when I learned about it. And then I even like, whenever I get like, see like the trailer for it, I'd like send her and be like, was this the movie that you're gonna be in? She's like, yeah, oh God. But like, I've just heard from like looking at the script, like as soon as they inject, like her muscles like get bigger and bigger. And it's like, again, people
Yeah,
don't
see,
understand
that's
that
not the message you
oh
want
my
to
god,
show.
oh my god, and people don't understand too that the majority of steroids are for recovery. They're not for. I mean, a lot of them do help with muscle growth, but most of it is just so that you can work out the next day just as hard. That's why a lot
Yeah.
of wrestlers that I have followed take it is so that they can wrestle 5 or 6 times a week in the
Hmm.
mat.
I
So
don't
it's
think people truly understand the power of food.
oh my
Like,
god, yeah, oh my god, train on an empty stomach versus a full stomach. It's well, I will say though, we're talking about sleep though. Sleep is the one where it's like train without sleep. Good luck to you.
mhm, yeah. Sleep, food. I would say sleep and food, just for growth purposes, those are the first and foremost. If you're not doing those properly and you just add gear, good luck. You're not going to get the results. Even when you have them all together, it's not like the gear is, adding to. No, it's a very, very slow progression. You have to be consistent. You have to make sure, all your ducks are in a row. You can't just, it's not a magic pill.
This is my last point on this, but like I had a friend in college who took HGH and didn't even work out just because he thought that it would get him bigger just by taking it. But he didn't even train. Like he didn't even like go to a gym at all or like
Yeah.
exercise. He just would
Did it
take it.
help?
No, of course it didn't because
See, like HGH has other properties besides like muscle growth, helps with the skin,
yeah,
other things. So yeah, people do like I know like older people who,
his his
to
his
get it
skin got
medically.
worse, Renee. Like he was like crater face. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. He
Well,
used to be a
was it
decent looking
medical
guy too.
grade?
Like
You know what I
yeah,
mean? Who knows where he got it from? Did he get it from like a doctor? It could have been something totally different.
who knows?
That's what I tell people. You got to make sure you know what you're, especially us females. Someone could easily just sell you a bottle of test saying it's whatever and good luck. It's scary.
Yeah, especially yeah, and especially with the whole female side of it too. It's like especially for females, I say this, you have to do your research because it changes the female body more than it changes the male body. And I'm just going to leave it at that. But there are sources that you can go and see. So just be aware of that when you jump into it.
Yeah, things are a lot different now. There's a lot of resources, there's hormone clinics, there's tons of good professional coaches that, coach top Olympians you could actually speak to. So it's not the wild, wild west. Do your research before you put anything in your body or do anything to your body, please, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's if there's one thing people take out of it, it would be that. But what do you think that, bodybuilding, especially the female side of it in general, can do to help promote itself more and reach a bigger audience? Because I know it's a niche sport. I know it's a niche amount of fans where you're not going to get like the following of any of the major sports, really, honestly. But like, what do you think
Yeah.
that they can do, because there have been, so many attempts to make it more popular, but it never really has caught on?
I mean, one thing that I want to see more of is podcasts, but I know there are some female
Oh,
podcasts
no,
out
I'm just gonna
there.
stop you there, because that is one thing that I'm so proud of, is that like when I started, there was nobody doing this, but now
Yeah.
there's thousands of them out there. And
Yeah.
anytime I see
I
a
just
female
wish they were
podcast,
more popular,
oh yeah,
like Fuad with his
yeah,
bodybuilding bullocks and all that. Like I wish we could get like female podcasts to get those ratings because the females
yeah,
are watching the males podcast. I'm like, come on, ladies, we
yeah.
gotta get
That's why
but
whenever I see a female podcast, I always promote it and I plug it and say, everyone go and follow this, because like this is a I have a decent following. It's not a huge following, but like, yeah, it's like anything that I can do to help those ones out, because it's like that's the ones that you should be listening to, because I'm a dude who talks to females. It shouldn't have to be the standard, where like you see a lot of guys that
yeah.
make podcasts where it's like, I want to see one where it's the women talking, because they're the ones that have to go through with all this stuff.
Yeah, and I love podcasts. That's pretty much what I watch on a daily, or just podcasts, whether it's comedic podcasts, bodybuilding, whatever the case may be. I've always considered doing one. People are like, you do so well on camera. I just wish that there was just more. Like, I feel like a lot of the podcasts out there are just like reviewing shows, which is good. You know what I mean? But I think we need more. Like, we need like a food ads pod. Like, we need people just the everyday life, just shooting the shit, and I think we just need more of that.
Yeah.
And I feel like the guys are more like branded than not branded, but like bound together friendship wise than the females. So I'd like to see more of that too. Like we're not competing, like we are competing against each other, but we're not. I've met a lot of friendly
Oh my
faces.
God, women having a hard time getting along. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, like I mean, like I have my resting bitch face, but I feel like I'm super friendly when I'm at shows. I try to like talk to other people. But it's very hard, especially a lot of the women coming up in bodybuilding now, they don't want to do women's physique. They don't want to do women's bodybuilding. They want to do wellness. They want to do bikini. Why? Because they're new, they're fresh. They think, maybe our divisions make us look a little more manly. So that's wellness and bikinis getting, I mean, especially wellness, they're getting a lot more promotion, I think, nowadays. Not to say that they shouldn't. I mean, they look phenomenal, but we need a little more on our end. I'm trying to think of like more we can do. I know there's podcasts out there. I saw that Alina Papa's doing like her own female bodybuilding show,
Well,
which
here's
is
the
kind
thing,
of
though, that those usually last a couple months and then they're done, because people don't realize like this is a long game thing that you gotta do, where you're not gonna get that many views up front.
yeah,
You have to do dozens upon dozens before. I've only seen like maybe a handful of podcasts in general that like after the first few episodes, like they just take off and they're massive. Like
yeah,
it takes time. So a lot of people, they just give up after a few months, when it's like, hey, you were maybe like 1 or 2 months away from like actually breaking through.
yeah. And I think some of them are like, I don't want to say boring, but I'm like, I just wish like they're very like professional. I'm like, that's not like a podcast I want to watch. Like I want like some joke, you know what I mean? I want it to be entertaining too. So it's like when you're just a podcast just stating things and it's very serious, yeah, you'll get views, but like Fuad, his podcast is barely even about bodybuilding half the time. You know what I mean? That's why a lot of people like it because it's just your everyday life. So I mean, I've been talking to people, I've been considering it. It would be something fun just to do like a group of female bodybuilders actually just talking about everyday life. I feel like there's not a podcast really like that. Um,
Well, what's your conversation going to be? Oh, we just got up, worked out, and ate, and went to bed.
well, other things too,
No,
like
I know what you're talking about, but I'm just saying that's the
yeah, I just
stereotype
feel
that
like
that's all you guys do. Yeah.
I feel like they always just talk about like, oh, today we're going to talk about PEDs or today we're going to talk about this show, and it's like there's other things, I guess. I don't know. It's very hard. I wish we were, as popular and stuff as the men, but we just are not.
And it has been getting better, though, I will say. Even in the 6 years that I've been
Yeah.
doing this, it has been slowly getting there. So I think, who knows where it's going to be in another 6 years or so, but we can only hope. But how much does this piss you off? Because this is a demographic of people that I really dislike, are the ones who literally get into the sport just for the clout that it's going to get them on Instagram, and that is the vast majority of people. And I just those people that like aren't dedicated, where they do it, they'll do one show and then they'll just be like, oh my god, they just do it just for Instagram. Once they get followers, then they kind of stop, and then they get into like their brand deals, which I'm fine with branding yourself and stuff like that. But the people that you can tell just almost abuse the sport just for their own gain themselves, like. And then I look at people like you who are like actually dedicated in the sport and like have been doing it for years and like are like an actual bodybuilder. But how much does that upset you? Like when those people tend to get more views and like they tend to get more following than the people that are like the actual competitors.
It doesn't upset me as much, because I think that, the people who truly, like, respect the sport and love bodybuilding, like, truly, who would do it without social media. I mean, I was doing this. I remember my first prep, I think I posted once. I was one of those. Now I post more, of course, just, because that's my income, so I have to promote myself. Trust me, if it was up to me, I would be posting a lot less. I like to kind of be in the shadows. But my fans, they're really appreciative and they want to see what I'm doing. So I try to post pretty often, but you can tell, who's doing it for the right reasons and who's not. I don't really let it get to me. I don't really pay attention to that as much. But the cream rises to the top. Is that how they say it? So these people usually aren't winning shows.
Yeah.
Not to say I'm over here winning all the shows, but
Yeah, Miss
you can
14th.
see who's visibly improving year after year and who's like taking the time and putting in the work. My favorite people though are the ones who like believe their followers telling them like they're going to go to the Olympia and all this stuff, and I'm like, this is your first time even competing in the pro. You know what I mean? I mean, there are great athletes that fucking pro debut go straight to the Olympia. I envy them because that's awesome. Um but I think there's just a lot of delusion in the sport. Like even when I was doing New York, there was a chance I could have maybe possibly won, but there was by no means was I going in there thinking I was gonna blow the fucking doors off the place. It's good to have confidence and it's good to really believe yourself, but I think some people are just they're very delusional in the sport. They think, oh, I have 1 million followers, I'm gonna win. Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like yes, you're popular, but the judges are not pulling up your Instagram page and looking at you. They're looking at you on stage. If you
Yeah.
are not the winner that day, you're not the winner. And that's just that.
I'm not gonna lie. There's sometimes where just being the nice guy that I will message some guests if they're getting ready for a show and just be like, "Good luck. I think you're gonna do amazing," knowing deep down that I don't think they're gonna do amazing, but I'm just being nice. And then they'll message me back and be
Yeah.
like, "Oh
That's
my
why I
god,
just don't
no,
say.
no, no!" And then they'll be like, "Oh my god, I think so too." And then I just want to message back like, "Really? Just really?" with a
Yeah.
question mark or something like that. But I just do it just to be nice. But like, I know some people who actually buy that, and you're like, first of all, don't ever base your life off of what people on the internet tell you,
No.
because if
Even
you
when
do,
people
you're
tell me
going
I
to
look
be
good, I don't believe
miserable.
them.
Well, yeah, because you look like dog shit, Renee. Like, let's be completely
I believe that.
honest. So
Well, that's why I keep getting
I
better.
was like, I was even thinking before, so I was like, should we even have the video on for this one? Like, let's be honest completely, because I don't have to stare at that for that. No, I'm just,
Sorry.
I have to make sure that for everyone that I'm joking, because there are some idiots out there that don't understand humor, sarcasm, and be like, why are you insulting your? I've had to deal with
Giving
that.
some big Jabba the Hutt vibes over here.
Oh my god,
Just sitting
yeah.
here like a pile.
Oh
But
yeah.
no, I mean, like I said, having confidence and all that, that's great. I definitely, believe in myself to an extent. But I think that, social media, it's great, but sometimes I think people, they're not very realistic. They kind of live in this fantasy world, and it's like that's not the way the world works. Just because 500,000 people liked your picture does not mean you're going to win your show. You look great. Not to say these people don't look awesome, but I think these people can't distinguish the lines of transforming and just looking good and being competitive on stage.
Is it funny when you get those reactions? Because there's some guys I know that comment on some of these famous things, and they think that they might be like the strongest thing in the entire world that comment, and they just think that like you can do stuff when you really just have to message them back, being like, "I'm 5'2", like let's be complete." Because I get that sometimes when I even post the pictures of the guests, and then I'll get people commenting like, "God, I bet you could lift like a truck or something." And I just want to message them back and be like, "No, just
Well,
no."
I've had
Like,
someone want me to do like a lift and carry video with my boyfriend, like hold like a
yeah,
baby. I'm like, he is like 240. Like, I can't just lift him like a baby and carry him around the house. I will fold like a chair. So that's what I'm saying. A lot of Instagram is like illusion because people see me, they think I'm really. I also have long muscle bellies in some areas, so people think I'm just like really tall and I'm really short. So, like I said, don't believe everything you see on Instagram. I've seen people who look crazy on Instagram, then you see them on stage. and it doesn't correlate, I get that comment myself, which sometimes I've had bad peaks, but
Well, but then on the opposite, I've seen some people where I've went to a local bodybuilding show and I saw a guest that I didn't think was that big, and then you meet him in person, like, oh, holy shit, like Jesus.
yeah, or they might not look that impressive in the off season and they get into prep and it's like,
No,
yeah.
it totally happens. But I will have to say though, I did see whoever did this that guy should have,
I know exactly
against
what you're about to say.
what the video.
Oh no.
No. I was talking about the video that you post. It was a couple of years ago where you were like right in prep and you were wearing a shirt. You're like in a gym. You were in a hat. And then there was a guy posted. The moment that I saw that, and I even thought to myself, I was like, why the hell is she a figure competitor? And this was like 2 years ago when it was like a training thing of you, and then you did like a front double at the end. And if
Oh, that
that
was
video,
when I did that was my prep for Tampa.
yeah, when I saw that, I was
My
like thinking,
YouTube video,
like, why
yes.
the hell is she a figure competitor? When I saw it's like when you're talking about like now finally going to women's physique, I was like, wait, because even I like because I followed you and stuff like that, but like I don't
Mhm.
follow people like religiously, so I took it's like when you still told me like I'm finally going to women's physique, I was like thinking to myself, wait, she hasn't been in women's physique for like 3 years now, like what the hell's going on? So
I know, it's been figure. The thing is like I've always been able to get like pretty grainy. Like
yeah,
I have that good skin for that. It's just a size thing. Like I said, I'm trying to like do this as healthily. I don't even know if that's a word, as healthily as I can. And just taking each off season with a stride, really trying to improve. I feel like when you're doing show after show or competing year after year, it's very hard to improve. So it's hard to step away from the stage. But yeah, I knew that I've always reached a level of conditioning that was very like top notch, but I knew that I needed size to be competitive. Even then, I thought I needed size for figures. So I don't know. Who knows how big I'll have to get each year? Everyone's getting a little bigger. Hopefully, they start to put a cap on that.
jeez,
But right now, my focus isn't really just getting big. It's just being more refined. Everything's kind of there. Of course, I need a little more hamstrings, a little more shoulders. Certain things need to be brought up, but it's just mainly getting denser around my whole physique, and I just want to have really good detail. I feel like that's what's really separating the top Olympians from other competitors is some women are getting just big, and I mean, being big, that's one part of it, but when you're not lean enough and you don't have, the detail to your physique, you're probably not going to win a show unless, there's other women who are at your same, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if you get what I'm trying to
no,
say,
I
but
get what you're saying totally, but I do gotta ask out of curiosity, what did you think I was gonna bring up when I asked my last question?
oh, I thought you were going to bring up the whole Reddit thread about claiming that me being natty.
Oh no!
I was like,
I don't
I
even
never
go
claimed
on.
I
I
was
mean,
natty.
I did one time where I looked on Reddit and I looked up like one get. I did the peer do not think too, and I saw some people and I was like, okay, these guys that are commenting are idiots, and it's yeah, I think it's hilarious that people even think that. I mean, it's like it's
Yeah, I don't take offense to it at all. I just thought it was funny because they were like, they put like my pictures when I was like 17 to like now, and they're like, she's not natty. I'm like, first of all, I never said it. I mean, in the first picture I was, but obviously when I'm in a prep, they took like the most like no makeup, grainiest picture they could for my prep. I'm like, they told me I looked like what's his face, that actor. I can't even remember his name. The one who's funny. I think he's from the UK. Damn. Starts with a B. He
Ben.
doesn't talk.
Oh oh um uh shit. I know who
Why
you're
don't you
talking about.
remember?
No, I know who you're talking about. People in the comments are gonna know it, but yeah, he's the
Yeah.
butter. No, it's shoot, hang on. We're gonna figure this out here live. We're not live,
I
but
don't. I
we're
almost
recording.
want to say Bert, but it's not a Bert, or it's a
He always wears a suit and tie and everything, and he's
Bean,
kind of
Mr.
yeah,
Bean.
Mr. Bean. Yeah, that's what I was
They
thinking of.
said I was like
Yeah.
Mr. Bean.
Okay, that's not. That wasn't even. I
I
mean,
laughed. So that's the thing. Like you can't offend me because I will laugh with
yeah.
you. I love making fun of myself, but I just thought it was funny because I'm like I never said I was natty.
No, that's when you gotta
I mean,
log
I
in.
was before, but
No,
right
you got
now,
to make an account, log in, and say, actually, guys, I wasn't natural when I was 17, but now I am.
actually, I am Mr. Bean. I just got very
Yeah,
jacked.
that too. That too. I shrank a little bit too, but hey, that's just what happens. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's ridiculous.
No, that just killed me because I'm like, I'm not like a huge like top name pro or anything. I'm like, who would do this to me?
Well, the worst is even some of the things that I posted, like the thumbnails, like they have taken celebrities and they've morphed their face into that person. So like one they turned into like Taylor Swift, another one they turned into like another celebrity, and it was just like, guys, what are we doing here? Like, come on
Please
now.
stop.
The worst one, the one that I like think these people need to be locked away is if they take like young children or like babies' faces and they put them on like competitors. And I'm like, what are we doing here,
Yeah,
guys?
that's too far. Some of these pages, I'm like, look at their edits. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, they make people's
And some of them
bodies
try to
so
like
small.
want to do like promotions with me, and I'm like, dude, you have literally pictures of like 8-year-olds in bodies of like Olympians, and it's just like, why would I want to do that? Like, first of all,
Yeah.
how are you dealing with so far, even with AI, where like people can just edit things now? Like, as a bodybuilder, as someone who judges themselves more than probably any normal person does, how are you going to deal with the fact with AI now, where there are going to be people that can change things so much about themselves, especially on the internet? Yeah, with AI, I have no idea. I mean, my little brother does these one things just for fun. Where he'll have like Trump saying something or another person saying something, and he'll just send it to us, and it'll be him insulting us or something like that, and it's some of the most hilarious stuff ever. But like, yeah, but that stuff is good. But I just want to know what that's going to end up being like, 5 to 10 years from now, when you can't even distinguish what a person really did or didn't do, because you know you can just fake it. But what are your
Yeah, it's
plan?
pretty creepy.
Oh my god! And just thinking
Like,
about
I'll
like what
watch
people
some
could make
things,
of
like, I
you,
watched, like,
yeah.
on a comedy podcast, and people will, like, AI generate specials of people that are dead.
Oh, and the fact that like, think about how many like fake sex tapes will leak then of like people then too, where you could
Oh,
just like
yeah, at
fake
the
that
Taylor
stuff.
Swift thing, like
Oh my god, I hate Swifties. I really do. So I got to go to her concert when she came up here because another podcast I do where I do celebrities, they had someone call in sick at the last minute, and they're like, "Hey, we have 2 journalism tickets for the Airs Tours. You want to go?" And I was like, of course, just because it's a big huge event."
Yeah,
It was too freaking long. It was like 4. It was like
yeah.
4 hours long, and you're like, you can only take so much, and hearing like little girls and older girls and older women scream their hearts out for like
Yeah.
4 hours. It's like the ears can only take so much. Where you're just like, okay, it's time that we wrap things up. But no, it was an experience that I will be able to tell my grandkids that I saw that one pop star play that one time. But
Yeah, not my forte.
not at all. And then she's got to go and ruin football, but that's a whole another topic that I don't even want to get
Yeah,
into
we'll
because
just that.
that'll be a little too controversial there. But again, so what are your plans for the rest of the year? Where would you like to be at? Because I'd like to have you on in a year from now instead of waiting 3 more years. But where would you like to be at a year from today?
Just, just overall denser. I just wanna grow more, establish myself here in Vegas a little more. There's actually a lot of stuff out here that I haven't been able to see, just because, like I said, I was in prep. So, just right now the main focus is just developing my physique more. I feel like that's, like, my main focus every year. Overall life, we're thinking about, like, buying a house and all that. So there's just a lot of moving parts. We're renting now here in Vegas, so, um just adulting, normal stuff, paying the bills. Bodybuilding is obviously my work, so just gotta go to the gym 5 days a week, do my cardio, eat my meals, and hopefully with consistency and hard work, we'll be at a better spot a year from now.
First of all, screw you for saying that at 26 you were thinking about buying a house when I'm almost 30, and I know I'm probably about 5 years away from even having that conversation myself. So yeah, just oh my god, don't even get me started on that as well. But that's great. I'm really happy to
Thank
hear
you.
that. At least there's someone in my age range that is at least thriving a little bit here. But
Trying my best.
yeah, that's honestly.
Sources of income, as you know, bodybuilding is not.
Yeah. Well, that's all.
Hey,
I mean, that's really all you can do. And that's one thing I wish think that would make the sport more popular too, is if they made more like mainstream ways to make money too, where you wouldn't have to do some things that people do. Which again,
yeah,
I have nothing against, because hey, everyone's got to make money. But like, if they had like more, even like just like sponsorships, like actual sponsorships, where like they paid you a lot of money, that would be
yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's just not. I mean, hopefully, like down the road, things. I mean, as you see, like prize money is going up and
Mhm.
more opportunities are opening up. I hope that over time it just gets a little better, especially for us women. I feel like we work so hard and like
Yeah.
I feel like we should get a little more respect
Oh,
sometimes. But I
absolutely.
understand it, money, business. I get it. I myself own my own little business, so decisions have to be made and emotions, can't be in the picture sometimes. So I get that.
I understand both sides, but at the same time, I'm thinking like you got to give them just a tiny bit of slack. Now, not as much slack, I think, as much people want, but you got to give them some bit of a slack where it's like, hey, it's a lot younger of a sport than the men's side, and everyone knows, but like, just give them a little something. Like, you don't have to give them exactly what they're asking for, but just give them something just to show that you're willing to bridge the gap, even just, the tiniest bit. That's, my 2 cents there
No,
at
I
least.
agree.
But, again, Renee, it's an absolute delight to have you on. I'm going to admit this now at the end of the podcast because I didn't say this before we started recording or when I first started, but this is off 0 hours of sleep, everyone. So it's a miracle that I made it through this and was
Yeah.
somewhat coherent. I should say, I think I did an okay job, but again,
Yeah, you did.
that's not okay. Well, the worst one was one time I went a full day without sleep and I had to do 3 podcasts the next day. That was horrible.
I think the last time I like did like a full day without sleep was either like trying to catch a flight or like in college, but I wasn't doing anything like this afterwards. So
Well, again, with me, like I could be, half dead, and I'd still be like, "Let's broadcast and let's do something like that." That's just my personality. But again,
a
everyone,
couple 5-hour energies and
oh my god. Well, yeah.
things
Well,
like that.
okay. So I made the mistake one time at work where I mixed a 5-hour energy with a Monster Energy, and then chugged it, and then let's just say about an hour later, I was on the Iron Throne for a good 45 minutes, and I probably lost about 10 pounds.
Oh, I believe it.
My
It's like the
heart,
same thing where you accidentally take too much pre-workout
yeah,
and
we're
you're
like,
like,
I was like going really fast, and all of a sudden my heart was just like, and I was like, oh god,
yeah.
and then
Well,
I had to tell everyone, I was like, I'm gonna be gone for a little while now. I'll just take my lunch break right now. But so there was that. But we'll end on that note, everyone. But again, Renee, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
of course, anytime.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. This is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.